Most people grow up believing wealth is the domain of the brilliant. The Ivy League graduate, the born prodigy, the genius who solves equations in their sleep. But the truth is far more unsettling. Wealth gravitates toward those who are strategically aware, not necessarily intelligent. Machiavelli wrote that fortune bends to those who move with intention, not those with impressive resumes. That single observation should make you question everything you've been told about success. I once thought only the elite had access to real wealth. That was until I found myself in a room full of high earners. What I saw shattered my assumptions. One man took the stage, stumbled through his sentences, barely held eye contact, and yet, almost as an afterthought, mentioned he couldn't break past $400,000 a month. His lack of polish was almost painful to watch, but his bank account? Untouchable. In that moment, the ground beneath my worldview cracked. If someone so unremarkable could command that level of wealth, then intelligence wasn't the gatekeeper. Strategy was. I stepped outside, called my father, and swore to him I would never again trade my hours for a paycheck. Because clearly, wealth doesn't belong to the clever. It belongs to the strategically relentless. Here's the paradox. Strategy devours intelligence every single time. Highly intellectual people often suffocate under the weight of their own calculations, running simulations in their minds until the opportunity slips through their fingers. Meanwhile, the Machiavellian thinker asks a simpler question. Can this decision destroy me? If not, move, act, execute. Modern education feeds us a poison. Analyze everything, act on nothing. But wealth doesn't respect analysis, it respects movement. The winners aren't the ones with the best ideas. They're the ones who refuse to sit still, while everyone else drowns in hesitation. You don't have to be a genius. You need only to remain in the arena long enough to gather leverage, skills, alliances, endurance. Wealth isn't lightning from the heavens. It's winter after winter survived until spring arrives. Ironically, the less intellectual often leap the farthest. Why? Because they aren't crippled by the illusion of certainty. The hyper-analytical man sees 1,000 possible failures and stays docked at the harbor. The Machiavellian man hoists his sails into the storm, knowing that survival, not perfection, is the prize. As Machiavelli himself warned, it is better to act and repent than to hesitate and be devoured by time. When I look at the self-made wealthy I've met, I don't see unmatched intelligence. I see resilience. I see emotional durability, the ability to eat rejection, swallow boredom, endure ridicule, and keep moving forward. Intelligence without execution is sterile. Naive persistence, on the other hand, has built empires. I couldn't even string proper sentences together when I started making money. But I could take humiliation on the chin. I could persist in silence. And eventually, silence broke. Here's a bitter pill. Appearances outweigh substance in this world. Machiavelli wrote it centuries ago, and it's even truer now. Appear confident, remain consistent, and deliver actual results. Eventually, the market will believe you belong. And once the market believes it, it becomes real. So don't ask yourself if you're smart enough. Ask if you're willing to move while others stall. Because money doesn't flow to knowledge, it flows to courage. And don't expect a steady paycheck of progress. Wealth doesn't drip in, it floods. Long seasons of drought, then an avalanche. The man who cannot endure the desert never tastes the oasis. When I built my first company, I didn't just crawl forward slowly, I bled money. It looked like ruin. Then suddenly, the dam burst. $0 to $7 million in half a year. Why? Because compounding does not reward the impatient. It rewards the one who withstands silence while everyone else abandons the field. This is Machiavelli's hidden lesson. Time itself is the currency of power. Whoever controls time controls the outcome. But most men squander patience, begging for early applause, chasing validation they don't need. The ones who endure obscurity outlast and outmaneuver their competition. Discipline, then, becomes its own elimination tool. Wealth, make no mistake, is forged in the shadows, revealed only in shock. Savings aren't about riches, they're about time. I built what I called a break glass in case of emergency fund, not because I thought it would make me rich, but because it bought me aggression. With my baseline survival secured, I could swing big without desperation. You can't act like a king if you're terrified about feeding yourself tomorrow. Financial buffers buy you psychological oxygen, not luxury, freedom. And freedom breeds boldness. Most people claim they need more money before they act. That's a lie. What they need is more courage. As Machiavelli said, every course of action carries risk. Prudence is simply choosing the least fatal, and the most fatal decision of all, remaining safe in a job while time erodes your upside. I tried to cheat this once. I thought I'd found the shortcut, passive income. I bought a rental property, thinking I'd cracked the code. Instead, I bled $20,000 and months of frustration. Here's the truth no one likes to say. Passive income isn't passive. It's the second game, not the first. You earn the right to passive income by mastering active competence. Every investment requires skill, assessing risk, reading people, navigating markets. If you can't manage those in your career, you won't manage them with capital. Your money won't work until you've proven you can. This is why most people never escape the rat race. They chase the fantasy of effort-free wealth. But fortune doesn't reward wishful thinking. It rewards bold pursuit. Machiavelli described fortune as a woman, fickle, but seduced by audacity. You don't attract her with hopeful thoughts. You seize her with relentless action. And here's the most brutal truth. The world doesn't care about your intentions. It only rewards undeniable value. Problems solved so completely that money has no choice but to flow in your direction. At some point in every ambitious life, you realize effort alone is not currency. Replaceable effort is cheap, but irreplaceable value, solutions only you can deliver, ushers you into a different economy. I learned this firsthand as a personal trainer. I hustled endlessly, begging for clients, while others seemed to attract them with no effort. A mentor finally told me, "Forget the hustle, be the best." At first, I dismissed it, but over time, I understood. Excellence has gravity. True skill bends the market around you. Machiavelli observed that reputation can be a sharper weapon than armies. People honor the man, not the title. So I built proof. Real results. Tangible transformations, competitions, standards I lived out myself. And once I embodied the solution, demand overwhelmed me. Not because I begged for attention, but because I had become undeniable. Money always follows value. Excellence is value. And in a Machiavellian world, perception is half the game. Become visibly excellent, and the market inflates your worth far beyond the raw effort required. But here's the catch most people miss. Value is not absolute. It's relative. You might create something good, but if it doesn't solve a painful enough problem or remove enough friction, no one will pay for it. I once invested in a SaaS company that seemed promising. It solved a problem, yes, but not one urgent enough. Customers shrugged. Growth plateaued. We sold for a modest return. But when that same founder pivoted into a protein bar business, everything changed. Why? Because he targeted a pain people hated. Gut issues, bloating, chalky taste. He didn't build a better bar. He built a bar that eliminated what every competitor failed at. The product exploded. Here's the lesson. People don't buy solutions. They buy relief. They pay to escape pain or to accelerate pleasure. The greater the pain removed, the greater the price commanded. In Machiavellian terms, a prince secures power not by being gentle, but by eliminating rivals. Likewise, A product doesn't win by being decent. It wins by making competitors obsolete. Your wealth, then, is not proportional to how good you are. It is proportional to how ruthlessly you eradicate obstacles for others. Look at my own journey. I started solving small problems, helping individuals lose weight. That scaled into solving problems for gym owners, how to attract clients. Then I moved on to entrepreneurs, how to build companies worth selling. At each stage, the problems grew harder, but so did the payoff. Wealth is not earned. It is extracted through leverage, mastery, positioning, and the scale of your wealth mirrors the scale of the problems you choose to solve. The man fixing a billion-dollar bottleneck can earn more in a month than someone fixing minor inconveniences for a lifetime. But no one starts at systemic leverage. You begin small, local, obscure. You stack credibility. You build tools. And with each level up, you become more formidable. So ask yourself, what pain am I solving? Who else is solving it? And what would it take to solve it better? Faster or more completely than anyone else? If the answer terrifies you, good. That's the right problem. Comfort breeds mediocrity. Fear points toward leverage. In this world, the market rewards not ambition, but competence, ruthless competence. There is no nobility in staying broke, but there is honor in enduring the humiliation of beginning. Too many refuse to start at the bottom. They think low-status work is beneath them. But here's the irony. The ones who humble themselves early ascend the highest. The ones who cling to pride stay stuck forever. I remember guiding a tourist on a fitness trail after college. He was overweight, exhausted, gasping for breath. Halfway up, he turned to me and said, "I'm just grateful there are people like you willing to do this kind of work." He meant it sincerely, but it sounded condescending. I could have taken offense. Instead, I smiled, because I knew something he didn't. I was willing to suffer now, so I could dominate later. The winners aren't those who protect their pride. They're those who delay pride in pursuit of power. Machiavelli said, "It is safer to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." The man who fears discomfort will never command fear or respect. The man who refuses to serve will never be served. There is no shame in labor, only in stagnation. Those who take on low-status roles expose themselves to far more opportunity than those who wait endlessly for perfect conditions. Poverty itself is not a moral failure, but clinging to it by refusing to act, that is a strategic failure. Here's another psychological trap. Envy. The moment you start counting someone else's money, you've already lost. I once walked away from a deal, not because it failed my metrics, but because a partner whispered in my ear, "He's going to make 500 million while we're doing all this work." I listened. I let envy override reason. That deal went on to skyrocket in value, far beyond what we projected, and I missed it. I judged with my emotions, not my strategy. Machiavelli warned us, men judge more by appearances than by substance. I judged how it felt rather than how it functioned. That mistake cost me millions. The wealthy understand that abundance is not zero-sum. Someone else getting rich doesn't subtract from you. Counting another man's pockets is the mindset of peasants. Kings measure territory, not coins. They expand their empires without resentment. Business isn't about fairness. The best deals are often the ones where every side feels like they won. Negotiate from resentment, and you slam the wrong doors. Negotiate from vision, and the right doors swing open. If scrolling social media fills you with bitterness about what others earn, unfollow, disconnect, recenter on your mission, because your attention is your most valuable currency. Envy is nothing but a tax on it. There's another myth that keeps people trapped. The belief that mindset must come first. That you have to believe in yourself before you can act. That's a comforting lie. I didn't believe I could make $1 million. I didn't believe I could earn hundreds of millions. What I did was copy the behaviors of those who already had. Belief came after action, not before it. Machiavelli would laugh at the modern obsession with manifestation. Power isn't gifted, it's seized. I remember when I was reading every book on wealth, trying to shift my money mindset. I even gave away groceries to strangers, thinking I was attracting abundance. Nothing changed. Then I met my mentor. I told him about my rituals, about visualizing money. He cut me off. Money doesn't discriminate. It goes to the one who works. That line split me in two. From that day, I stopped trying to rewire my thoughts. I started rewiring my behavior. Here's the truth. Every action you take is a vote for who you're becoming. Belief doesn't override cause and effect. The man who chops wood gets warm. The man who reads about fire freezes. If you want wealth, behave like someone who earns more than you. Take risks. Solve harder problems. Trade comfort for sovereignty. You don't need another book. You don't need permission. You need movement. And if you're still paralyzed, let me make it simple. The world doesn't pay you for your intentions. It pays you for the pain you remove, the structure you create, the dominance you enforce. Fortune isn't kind, but she is obedient to those who act. Think about this. We live in a society where people confuse effort with entitlement. They assume that long hours equal wealth, that grinding harder must eventually pay off. But money is not a wage for suffering. It is a byproduct of leverage, of positioning yourself where effort compounds instead of dissipates. The tragedy is that most never discover this. They confuse motion with momentum, busyness with progress. They stack up hours, but never stack up power. They spend their lives rowing harder instead of building a sail. Machiavelli would call this blindness to power. The world does not reward effort. It rewards the strategic application of effort. Value, leverage, timing. These are the true engines of wealth. Consider how wealth actually moves. It doesn't flow linearly. It erupts. Breakthroughs arrive in bursts after long seasons of apparent stagnation. That's why most people quit too early. They expect money to behave like a paycheck. Predictable, steady, immediate. But wealth is asymmetric. Months, even years, of invisibility followed by an avalanche. And when that avalanche hits, the unprepared drown. Because wealth doesn't just test intelligence, it tests character. Sudden abundance can destroy the undisciplined. Neuroscience calls this the dopamine trap, when the brain becomes addicted to the sudden rush of reward, chasing the next hit rather than sustaining long-term vision. That's why discipline is not just a tool, it's armor. The emotionally durable, those who endure obscurity and also resist intoxication, are the ones who keep wealth once it arrives. I've seen men strike gold and lose it faster than they earned it. They mistook a temporary surge for permanence. But Machiavelli would remind us, power that is not fortified, lost swiftly. Wealth that is not strategically protected, evaporates. So here's the paradox of the game. You must be bold enough to act, but patient enough to endure. Aggressive in motion, conservative in survival. A prince who rushes into every battle burns his army. A prince who never risks battle loses his kingdom. The art is in knowing which risks define you and which destroy you. And this is why courage outweighs brilliance. The history of wealth creation is littered with examples of average minds who outlasted superior ones simply because they could withstand more failure, more ridicule, more silence. Psychology calls this survivorship bias. We only see the winners. But what the winners have in common is rarely raw genius. It's grit. It's the refusal to die. When I began, I thought wealth was about making money. Later, I realized it was about buying time. And eventually, I learned it was about acquiring power. Power over choices. Power over your own trajectory. Money is not the goal. It is the scorecard of competence, a mirror reflecting how much value you've produced, how much pain you've removed, how strategically you've played. To obsess over money itself is to mistake the shadow for the object. Machiavelli wrote that reputation is stronger than armies. In modern terms, reputation is leverage. It bends reality. A strong reputation multiplies your opportunities. It lets you command resources, talent, capital, far beyond what your own two hands could ever build. But reputation must be earned in blood, in proof, not posturing. That's why the wealthiest people I know never asked, "How can I get rich?" They asked, "How can I dominate this niche so thoroughly that I am unavoidable?" That's a different question entirely. One is self-serving. The other is empire building. An empire is the true game. Not dollars, not fame. Sovereignty, freedom from permission, the ability to bend fortune to your will because you've built the leverage to do so. But here's the final truth. This path demands humiliation. It demands that you endure obscurity, envy, rejection, boredom. It demands that you act before you believe, that you persist before you're applauded, that you stay in motion while others collapse under doubt. There is no nobility in staying broke. There is nobility in beginning broke, in sweating through the low-status work, in using labor as the stepping stone toward sovereignty. There is nobility in choosing power over pride. Fortune, as Machiavelli warned, is a woman. She yields not to the dreamer, but to the pursuer. She does not bow to intentions. She bows to strategy, to audacity, to relentless action. So the question isn't whether you're smart enough. It isn't whether you're ready. The question is whether you're willing to endure the seasons of silence, whether you're willing to solve problems no one else dares touch, whether you're willing to exchange temporary pride for permanent power. Because in the end, the world doesn't care how many hours you worked, how pure your intentions were, or how long you dreamed. It cares only about the pain you erased, the leverage you built, the empire you claimed. And if you truly want wealth, stop waiting for belief. Stop waiting for permission. Act, persist, endure. Because fortune has never been kind, but she has always been obedient to those who dare.